Welcome to Charts Today. My name's David Linton, and today's edition for Wednesday, the 3rd of April, comes to you from London. And not much change really in the markets. We've seen generally a sea of green, so price is still rising in stocks, and dollar is still looking bullish, coming off a little bit this morning, but still holding the bull trend on all three time frames for the dollar index. Looking at the dollar against the euro, Eurodollar is still weak, and that strong dollar is the theme there. And against the Japanese yen, the dollar is still holding its strength, just ticking higher again this morning. So it's all about dollar strength in currencies at the moment. Sterling actually recovering against the dollar. Ironically, it's seesawing with all the spills and chills of Brexit, but we're seeing here that we are short-term bullish again, and against the euro, sterling also rising, and against the Swiss franc also. So just showing its strength there. Bitcoin had the massive jump yesterday. Interestingly, it's holding on to those gains, and we've come back to nudge that $5,000 level. So really significant that single buyer apparently has pushed Bitcoin up, and we're holding on to those gains. We've got upside targets some 20 and 30% off the bottom now, but it's still too early to say that Bitcoin is building a new uptrend. But certainly that's the biggest move we've seen for quite a while. Taking a look at the US stock market, we saw the S&P very little change last night, just holding on to its gains. The Nasdaq also holding on to its gains, and the Dow down 0.3%. So we are just seeing a bit of a fallback down. We'll look at the individual stocks in a moment. The Russell 2000 index, the broader-based 2000 stock index in the US, still just not performing as strongly as the other indices. The futures this morning, we've got the S&P future up 0.5% and the Nasdaq E-mini up 0.6%. That's pointing to moves higher, so we should see further gains in the US today at the open. And looking at the FTSE this morning, down very, very slightly, very little change. So the FTSE still looking strong on its recovery as well. And the midcaps in the UK also up quite strongly this morning, up 0.4%. So we're seeing rises there. The DAX up almost 1% this morning. Weaker euro just helping stocks there as well. And the CAC Current up 0.75%. Japan was up 0.6% overnight. Still medium-term bullish, but has work to do on that long-term chart. And the Hang Seng up 1%. So looking strong again. China really being the theme here, that we are just seeing that rise continuing. And if we look at the Shanghai index, we see here more and more it's just pushing higher, getting back through this long-term downtrend is starting to look more and more hopeful, and that upside target now well and truly established. Looking at the Sensex in India, up 1/3%, just powering ahead here. India making new all-time highs, so the one market that really is looking very strong indeed, and the Australian index also looking quite strong, up 0.2% overnight. Brent crude continues its rise, up 0.2% this morning, bullish on all three time frames, and WTI also pushing higher. Brent crude now nudging that $70 mark that we've had there as a target for a while, and US nat gas sitting at 2.68%. Gold still struggling at below $1,300, so still short-term bearish. Silver actually holding on, but just starting to move into short-term bullish territory, bucking the trend there with gold, which is quite unusual. Looking at US 10-year yields, their recovery continues back to 2.5%, having had a very big sell-off. This week's been a recovery week for bond yields, but still looking, the outlook is still pretty bearish. And German bond prices pushing lower this morning on their yield recovery. Taking a look at the individual stocks this morning, we look at the Dow. We saw the worst performers were Walgreens, down a massive 13%. That dragged the Dow down, and that's really a massive fall for a blue chip company like Walgreens. And we're seeing here that move to new multi-year lows. And of course, we're in downtrends already territory. Stocks in downtrends tend to fall, and Nike was down 1%, but it was all about that Walgreens move. Apple was up 1.45%. Microsoft was up very slightly, 0.14%, but still just holding its own there. Taking a look at the Nasdaq, we see here Wynn Resorts up 4%. Facebook was very strong, up 3.3%. And on the downside, we saw that Walgreens price as well. JD.com down 3% as well. Electronic Arts down nearly 2%. So we are still seeing some quite big falls there. The Aussie market this morning, we look here, we've got Sierra Resources up 8%. Domain Holdings up 8%. Here we see the live pricing coming in from Yahoo. And then on the downside, we've got Smart Group. They were down 8%. And that's that trend now faltering, making new lows. Massively underperforming the market this year. China had a fairly mixed. We're up nearly on all stocks. We only had about 6 stocks that were down. So China looking pretty strong. And in India, the Nifty 50, if India Bulls Housing continues its recovery, and we're just starting to see that recovery really starting to show through there, so that's looking pretty strong. Tata Steel up 2.3%, and then on the downside, if we just click on the percentage change column, we've got Hindustan Petroleum still down 3.7%, still looking a little bit weak on the long-term chart, medium-term better. We do have an upside target, but it's not yet activated, so we need to move to new highs to actually activate that price. And here we see again the live prices coming in from Yahoo Finance. Taking a look at the UK market, Persimmon is the best performer this morning, up 2% in the top 100 stocks. Melrose up 2.2%. Again, recovery underway there. Royal Bank of Scotland pushing higher, up nearly 2%. They've had quite a re-rating from £2 at the end of the year, getting up to £2.70, and we see the outperformance here on the Dow relative, outperforming 10%. So RBS really starting to come back. Lloyd's up. Prudential up, Barclays, we see here UK banks up strongly this morning. Burberry down 3.3%. Bats down 2%, and Imperial Brands down as well. So we're seeing a bit of a fall back there in tobacco stocks. Taking a look at the 250, the best performer, Stagecoach Group up 5%. That's starting to look like a recovery situation. Not quite yet on the long-term chart. And if we look at Amigo, was up 4%. Just Group up 3%, but not enough to really arrest this decline in the stock. Moving the other way, looking at Superdry. Yesterday, the vote all in the news, down 6% this morning. So there's by no means a turnaround yet. And back of our group down 3%, also just falling lower there. Looking at the top 50 in Europe, CRH Group up 2.2%. In Ireland, that's looking pretty strong. Volkswagen up 2% this morning, and again we're seeing just a recovery there. Bayer struggling after their big falls, but they're up this morning 1.5%, but not really enough to change the shape of the chart. Taking a look at the downside in Europe, we've got about 7 stocks down. We're seeing here down 7%, Danone down 0.4%. And Unilever, Enel, Sanofi down slightly as well. That's it for today. Until tomorrow, happy charting. See you then.